What is going on, everybody? Julio here, and in today's video you're going to learn how to build this responsive dashboard website using HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. So make sure you stay tuned for the project overview coming up next. So there's a few things to learn in this lesson. Obviously, the first one is making the website responsive. So this is the mobile view. Let me quickly showcase the mobile navigation. We have a drop-down menu. And then if we make the viewport larger, you'll see that all the content is going to adapt accordingly. Going back to the drop-down menu, if you've ever wondered how you can create one using JavaScript, you will learn that in this video. You will also learn how you can add a dark and light theme, and then we will store the selection within local storage using JavaScript so that even if we refresh the page, our selection is going to remain there. So if you guys want to see more videos like this one, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon, thumbs up the video, and leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Also, be sure to check out my social media accounts. All the links are going to be in the description below. Now, let's jump right into it. For those of you that want to follow along with me, make sure that you grab the asset files from the link in the description below. So feel free to pause the video, grab the files, and once you're ready, let's continue. So just a quick overview here for those of you that are brand new to HTML. So what I have here is a basic HTML5 template, and then I'm importing the remix icons. So going back to the completed project, these are the icons that we are going to be importing in. And then we just basically link to our style sheet, and then the same thing with the JavaScript file here at the bottom of the body. We also have several comments here that this is where each individual section is going to go. And we are going to start with the floating background image, which is this image that you see right here in the back. So that's just going to be a div with the class floating background image. And then inside of it, we will have an image. This image is inside of the assets folder, images folder, and it has the name of dash.png. Then what we are going to do is go inside of the header, because the header is going to hold all the navigation data, including this menu. So here we will have a div with the class of header. Well, actually not a div, but the header element with the class of header. And then in here we will have the nav tag alongside the class of nav and the class of container. So the container class here is going to limit how wide this particular container and any other container with this class is going to stretch to, and on larger screens we are going to center it in the middle of the page. Then we will continue by using an anchor tag with a class of logo. We can point this back to the index.html. And then we can just call this cPanel, which is the name of the site. Now we are going to wrap the list inside of a div with the class of navMobile. And the reason why I like to wrap it like this is because it just makes the reset later on for larger screens a lot simpler. So this is going to be this div right here, and then it has all this content inside of it. In here we will have a UL with the class of list. Then we will have an LI with the class of list item. And finally inside of it we will have a list link. We can go ahead and copy this LI 3 more times. Then here we can add an additional class of current. So this current class is just going to basically highlight the home button. On larger screens, we are also going to change the styles here to make it green. And then we can just say home. The next one is going to have the text of servers. Then the next one is going to have the text of proxies. And finally, this one is going to have the text of settings. Now, there's a few things that we have to change here because we don't want to use an anchor tag. So what we will use here is a button. So normally you would use an anchor tag if it leads somewhere else, like another page on the site. But in this case, we are just using this as a button, so it doesn't really lead anywhere. So that's why we are using the button here. And then we can just get rid of this href. Now we are still going to keep this list link class because we still want to share the same styles. However, we want to apply an additional class here, and this one is going to be dropdown btn. Then what we want to do is add another class of place items center, and we are just going to use flexbox on this class to center the content inside of here alongside the icon. So we can bring this down to a new line, and let's make sure that we remove this and close it properly as a button. Now let's add the icon. So we will use the I tag, and then we will say that the icon that we want is arrow, and then drop down. Well, actually not drop down, but drop right, and then line. And if we scroll down, we should be able to see the button here with the icon inside of it. Something else that I want to do here is add another class to this li. So this is going to be the drop down container. So we are going to apply a class of drop down here. And that's everything we need here. The next thing that we need is another list inside of this drop down li for the drop down menu that we have here. And that's going to be pretty simple as well. It's going to be exactly the same thing as this. So we will have another list, and then we are going to apply another class of drop down menu because this one is going to be the menu itself. Then actually we can just speed things up by grabbing one of these, and we can just paste it down below. Now the text really doesn't matter. You can change this to be whatever you want it to be. This is just for demo purposes, and then everything else can just stay as is. Next, I want to add, if we go back to this completed project, I want to add this button right here to close the menu. So to do so, what we are going to do is exit outside of this UL, which is going to be for the main list, still within this nav mobile container, which is going to be down here, this one. And we are going to have another button. This button is going to have the class of icon btn, then another class of menu toggle btn, and then menu toggle close. We are also going to use the same class of place items center. And that's all the classes that we need for this button. The next thing that we have to do is add the icon inside of it. So this one is going to be array close line. And that's pretty much everything that we need here. As you can see, the X is already showing up. The other thing that I want to do here is go outside of here. But first, let me copy this button because I'm going to be reusing it. So now that we are outside of the nav mobile, we want to add another div. This div is going to have the class of align right. And then here we are going to have 3 buttons. So let me just copy this. And that's all of our buttons here. The only thing that we have to do is just change some classes as well as the content inside of it. So this one can still keep the menu, the icon btn class, as well as the menu toggle btn. The only thing that we have to change here is close to open. Then here for this one, we can get rid of these 2 classes. And then we are going to place a different class here because this is going to be for the theme switch icons, which is this one right here, the sun and the moon. So the icons that we want in here, well, before we actually move forward that, let me apply the class that we need. So we want an additional class here of theme toggle btn, and then we can just go inside of here and change this class from close to sun, and then we can duplicate this down below and change this to moon. Just like so. So now we have the icons that we want here. Something that I forgot here as well is to change the icon for the menu toggle open. So the class here is going to be ri function. and then line. And that's going to give us the icon that we want. Now we need to change the last icon. So here we can just get rid of these two classes. We don't need anything else aside from the icon btn and place items center. And then here for this one, we can just say user 3 line. And that's going to give us the user icon that we want. So that's going to be it for this particular section. What we need to do now is go inside of the CSS so that we can make it look a lot better. And as you can already tell, I decided to include the custom properties as well as the light theme colors. The main reason because I didn't want to spend like a lot of time just typing them out one by one. It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you're new to CSS, what I'm doing here is just importing the Google fonts. Then I'm just creating some custom properties for the colors, font sizes, as well as the spacing. And then here we just switch up the colors for the light theme. So the benefit of using custom properties is that, for example, if you have a large project and you want to change the color scheme, all you have to do is just change the colors here. And everywhere they use this custom property, and then it's just going to change automatically. Same thing if you wanted to increase the font size or make it smaller, as well as the fonts. So that's pretty beneficial if you ask me. So now let's go ahead and continue by going down here to the base styles, and we are going to start with a basic reset. We are also going to be applying it to the before and after pseudo elements because technically they don't exist till you create them. And then here we can just reset the margin, same thing with the padding, and then we can set the box sizing to border box. And that's just going to make sizing your elements a lot simpler. I'm going to select the HTML document and apply a root font size of 10 pixels. The reason being because I'm using rem units here, and that's just going to make the math a lot simpler. So for example, if I set it to 10 pixels and I wanted to do 1.6, which is going to be 16 pixels in rem units, you can just simply do font size. And you can do 1.6 rem, and that's going to equal 16 pixels. So that's why 10 pixel is going to make the math a lot simpler. Now, something else that I like to do is turn the 10 pixels into percentages. So 10 pixels is going to be 62.5%. And the reason being is because when you use the zoom feature, everything just scales a lot better. So let me just comment that out as a note. Then we can style the body. Here we can apply a font family, which is going to be the custom property. Then we can apply a font size, which is going to be font size normal. Then a color. Actually, this one's going to be color light. And I had it backwards, so light color, which is this one. A line height of 1.5 to make it a little bit larger than the default one. And finally, a background color, which is going to be the body background color. Then I'm going to select all the ULs, set the list style to none to get rid of the bullet points. Then all of the anchor tags, and here I want to get rid of the text decoration by setting it to none. Let me just scroll down so that we can actually see what's going on here. And then what I also want to do here is inherit the color from its parent by using inherit. I'm going to select all of my images now. I'm going to give them a max width of 100%, and that's just going to make sure that the images will never overflow their parent container, which is why you just saw this one shrink. And then I'm going to give it a display of block. Now I'm going to style my buttons. And what I'll do here is say that my button is going to inherit all of the font properties. And then same thing for the color. And then what I'll do is set a background color here of transparent. Get rid of the border by saying border none. And I'm also going to be applying a border radius here of 0.4 rem. finally, I want to say that the cursor will be of pointer. And then we can select all of the icons. And here I'm going to be applying a font size of the font size large. Then here I'm going to set a line height of 0, mostly because it's going to interfere later on with the alignment. Right now you're not going to be seeing it in play, but you will later on. And that's pretty much it for the base styles. What I'll do now is go here inside of this reusable classes comment, and I'm going to select the container. Then in here, I'm going to set a max width, which is going to be 134 rem. Then the margin is going to be of 0 top and bottom, and auto left and right. I also want some spacing on the sides, so I'm going to set it to 1.5 rem, just like so. Next, I'm going to select the class of place items center. This will have a display of inline flex, and then it will be important. Mostly because later on we are going to have some conflict with certain things having a different display value that have this class, so I just don't want it to get overridden, so that's why I'm using important. So what I want to do next in here is align my items to the center, justify the content to the center as well. Then we are going to select another class of the grid, and this will have a display of grid. So we haven't created this class, or let's say that we haven't added it to anything within the HTML document, but this is one of the classes that we will need later on, and it will just basically turn any container into a grid container. Now we can work on the floating background image. So let's select that. And what I want to do here is set a height. So the height is going to be 45 rem. Then something else that I also want to do here is set the position to be of absolute, top 0, and left 0. Now I want to send this all the way to the back, so I'm going to give it a negative C index. And as you can see right here, now my text and other content is floating on top of it, which is what we want. Now, if you notice, the image is not really taking its full height. So what we have to do is select this again, floating background image, and then the image inside of it. And what we will do here is say that the image will be of object fit cover. But we also have to give this a height. It's going to be 100%. And let me move it up, just like so. So now it's taking all the space that it can. Let's now work on the header. And here we just select the header, and then we apply a background color. And this color is going to be the custom property of dark color. Just like so. Now let's select the nav. The nav here is going to have a height of 6 rem. It will be of display flex, align items to the center. Next, I'm going to select the logo. The font family here is going to be rock salt. And as a fallback, we will use cursive. So that's just in place in case for some reason this font doesn't load. I'm going to make the font weight bold. And then I'm also going to increase the font size. So this one is going to be font size medium. Let me actually give myself some more room to work with here. Next, I'm going to select the align right. And this will just have a margin left of auto, and that's going to push it all the way to the right. Then this is going to have a background color, which is going to be the accent color. And then I'm going to give this a border radius of 0.4 rem. Now I'm going to select all of my icon BTN. And then I'm going to give this a width of 3.5 And then the height is going to be 3.5 as well. Now, something else that I want to do here, well, technically I don't want to do anything else because it already has the color. So let's just go underneath here and we can work on hiding the icon that we don't want to see. So here, let's select the theme. Actually, let's go back inside of the index.html because we didn't really apply those classes. So here we need an additional class. So here we can say theme light icon. And then we can do the same thing for the other button. And then change this one to dark. So now let's go back. And then here we can say theme light. Actually, we want to hide the dark one since we are going to be within the dark theme by default. So theme dark, icon, display of none. So now the only icon that we see is the sun. Then we are going to work on the nav mobile container. So here, nav mobile. And this is going to have a width of 100%. A height of 100 of the VH. Then the background color is going to be the light color. Then the position is going to be fixed. Top 0, left 0. And then I want to give it some padding all around of 2.5 rem. Then I want to transform translate X. So we want to hide it. Let's just do a little bit over 100%. And that's going to push it all the way to the left. I want to give this a C index of a high value just so that it's always on top of all the content. And then I want to transition the transform over 0.5 seconds. And that's just going to be for the animation. Now, obviously, we want to see it for the rest so that we can style the rest of the content, or at least so that we can see what we're doing. So let's just bring that back. Let's also comment out the background color. And now let's just go ahead and go underneath and let's style up the list. List is going to be display flex. I want to change the flex direction to column, and I want to create some spacing between my items. So I'm going to be applying a gap, and this gap is going to be the gap small, just like so. Then I'm going to select my list link. This is going to be a display of inline block. And the reason for that is so that when we apply a padding here, top and bottom, it's going to respect it. If we don't have a display of inline block here, then it's going to have the default of inline and it's not going to apply. So let me actually showcase what I mean. So let's apply padding. Top and bottom, 1 rem. Left and right, 1.5 rem. So as you can see, that's applying. If I go ahead and remove this, then the padding top and bottom, it's going to go away. So let's go ahead and also apply a font size here of the font size small. And the color here is going to be the dark color lighter. Just like so. So now that we actually have better contrast here, we can go ahead and uncomment out this background color from the nav mobile. And we can go ahead and apply the styles for the current class. And then here we can just make the color darker. So we will use the dark color. Just like so. And this one should be dark color lighter, just like so. And we also want to style the button that we have here for the X. Obviously we can't see it because it's blending in, but that's going to be simple. So menu, toggle, close. The background color here is going to be the body background color. Position is going to be of absolute, top 2.5 rem, and then the right 2.5 rem as well. Just like so. Now the button is exactly where we want it to go. Now let's work on this drop down menu. So let's select the drop down menu. And here we are going to apply a background color with the following hex value, which is going to be E F0 F8. Then we can get rid of the gap that the items here have. Let me also apply a margin left of 1.5 rem, and that's just going to push it over a little bit. Then I want to transform, translate Y, -3 pixels, and that's just going to be for the animation. Then we want to also apply here a height of 0 for the time being. Let me just comment that out. The opacity here is going to be 0 as well, because obviously we don't want to see it unless we activate it. Let me just comment it out. And the transition will be on the transform over 0.5 second. And this should be an N transform. And something else that I want to do is add pointer events. And here I'm going to say none. So the reason why I'm adding a pointer event is so that when it's not visible, like unless we actually activate this menu here, it's not going to be clickable. Now, if we didn't have this, for example, you can see that everything is clickable. So that's how we turn off the pointer events, and then we turn it on later on once this is active, if that makes sense. Since we already have the base, we can just go ahead and turn this back on so that we don't see it. And what we are going to do now is apply some styles so that when we actually click it, the arrow is going to turn, and then the drop down menu is going to show. So first, let me select the arrow. So drop down, and then the arrow that's a direct child, which is going to be list link, and then the arrow inside of it. So that's what we want to select. And here we just want to apply a transition, transform, and then again, this is just going to be over 0.5 seconds instead. Now we can go ahead and actually play around with the drop down menu itself. So here we are going to apply the styles for the drop down. And then we want to say that when the drop down has the class of active, we want to select the list link that is a direct child. So if we go back to the index.html, so right here we have the drop down. This one is going to be the list link that is going to be a direct child. And what we want to do is target the icon inside of it. And what we want to do here is transform, rotate by 90 degrees. Just like so. So for example, if I was to remove this active class, you'll see that now the icon is going to, well, I ended up commenting out everything. So let me just take care of that. So now you see that the arrow is animated down, which is exactly what we want. Next, I'm going to select the drop down again. And when it also has the class of active, I want to select the drop down menu that is inside of it. And here we just want to reset the things that we applied the height of 0. So here we can just set this back to initial. The transform, translate Y, we can reset this back to 0. Then the opacity back to 1, and then the pointer events back to auto. Just like so. So the only thing that we have to do now is apply the JavaScript styles that are going to trigger the events. So this right here, basically. So let me actually move this down since this belongs down here. And for the nav itself, what I want to do is nav. Actually, let me place it on top here since it comes first. So nav mobile. And what I want to do here is transform. Well, I also want to apply the class of active here as well to the nav. So transform, translate X, and then this is going to be set back to 0. Since we have the styles already set up, we can go ahead and hide this. So let's just uncomment that out so that it's out of the way. And it seems like we applied the wrong background color here for the header. This should be the dark color, just like so. So let's come back down so that we can continue with the styles here. And as far as switching the icons themselves, so theme here, light, we can say theme dark icon. And this one is going to have a display of block because we want to see it. So basically, when we also add the theme for the body later on, and we want to locate the icon with the dark class inside of it, and we want to show it. And then we want to do the same thing for this sun icon, but it's going to be the opposite. And we just hide it. Actually, this should be light. So that's going to be none. And that's going to be pretty much it for the JavaScript styles. The only thing that we have to do now is actually make it functional. So let's go and take care of that right now. So let's start here with the first one by defining some variables. So const menu toggle open. And here I want to do a document query selector. And the element that I want to select is going to be the one with the class of menu toggle open. We want to do this 3 more times, and then we just change this to close. Same thing here with the name, should just be the open. And this one we can change the name to nav mobile element. And then here we can change this as well to nav mobile. So what we have to do now is here is apply an event listener to the icon itself. This one is going to be the nav toggle open add event listener. It's going to be an event listener of click. And then here, it's going to be an arrow function. And we can actually just not even bother with the curly braces since we only have one thing in here. So nav mobile element, class list. And then here we want to add the class of active. So let's see if that works. So here, if we click it, you see that the menu is going to open up. So that works. Now we have to make this button functional. So let's actually duplicate this down below. And then we just change open to close. And then here we just remove the class as opposed to adding it. So let's check that out. We click it and that works. So the one thing that we have to make work now is the button here when we click it. So to do that, we are actually going to come down here to this comment before we work on the theme itself. So what I want to do here to show the drop-down menu is apply an event listener to the document itself. So document dot add event listener. This event listener again is going to be of click. Again, another arrow function. And since we have multiple lines here, we actually have to use the curly braces. We don't have to use this, the the parentheses, unless we actually have multiple things that we want to pass in. So we can actually get rid of them and just say that E or element, because this is the element, this is going to be the placeholder for the element that we are going to be clicking on, and then we are going to be doing something with this parameter. So for example here, what we want to do is grab the drop down menu that we have here. So again, we will use document query selector. First, let me just store it inside of a variable. So drop down menu, and then here document query selector, and we want to select the drop down. Actually, this is kind of confusing since we have a drop down and a drop down menu. So let me just call this drop down by itself. And what we want to do here is basically say that when this element is the target, for example, when we click it, and the class contains drop down btn. So let me actually go ahead and make this bigger so that I can show you guys what I'm talking about. And if we go here, so here, for example, you see that this button has the class of drop down btn. And what we want to do is say that when this is the target, well, if the target contains this drop down btn class, then we want to do something with the drop down. So let me show you guys how that works. So here, let's start with an if statement. And we are going to say, well, it's going to be an if else. Let me just create the body for it first. So what we want to say in here is that when the element, so the parameter, this is going to be the placeholder, as I mentioned, the target, and then the class list contains, and then here we just pass in the class. So drop down of this just should be in quotation marks. So drop down btn. We want to do something. So what we want to do here is grab the drop down, and then we want to say that the class list, we want to add active. So now let's take a look at how that works. So here, for example, we open it up again. And as you can see, if I click anywhere, nothing happens because the target at the moment doesn't really have the class of dropdown btn. But notice this li here with the class of dropdown when I click this dropdown.btn. So as you can now see, this target matches what we have right here, which is the class of dropdown btn. So when we click it, what we want to do is add the class of active to this dropdown. And then if we go back inside of the CSS, for the styles here, you see that the dropdown, when it has the class of active, and then the elements inside of it, same down here, then all these styles are going to be taking effect, which is exactly what we want. So it's still the target, so the class remains. Now to get rid of this drop down menu, what we have to do is basically just click anywhere outside of it. But as you can see, it doesn't work, and that's because we haven't added the other condition. So let's just copy this, paste it in here, and as opposed to adding, what we want to do is remove. So if we go ahead and try that again, and then we use the inspector, you see that once the target matches the class, it's going to add the active class to the dropdown. And then when I click outside of it, because it doesn't match the dropdown btn class, it's just going to remove it. And that's how you create a simple dropdown menu. Now, if you had multiple drop-down menus within your website, it gets a little bit more complex, but it's still not that hard. All you have to do is just loop through all the elements that you have and then apply the classes accordingly. So let me just close that out and let's test everything out again. And everything works as it should. So let me just make this smaller again. And the other thing that we have to do now is just change the theme, which is by making this button functional. So let's come back up here, and where's the comment right here? So in this comment, this is where we are going to be toggling the theme. And the first thing that I want to do is just create a variable, and this one is going to be for the body element. And then here we can just grab the document dot body. Then another variable that we need is for the theme toggle btn. And here we can just use document query selector. And then we can just pass in the theme toggle btn. We need one more here. So this is going to be the one for the local storage. And we still haven't done anything here, but it's going to come into play later on. So we want to say local storage, and then we want to get the item that's inside of there with the current value. So here we want to call this, you can call this anything you want, but this is just what I'm going to call it. So current theme. And then we can just go ahead and change the name. So current theme. Now what we want to do is create an if statement to kind of evaluate whether a current theme actually exists or not. So we can say if current theme, we want to do the following, which is body element, class list, add, and then we can say theme light. So again, what we are doing here is checking whether a current theme is actually set within the local storage, which is why we are getting the item. And then we check if there is a theme, then the body element will have the class of theme light added. Now that on its own, it's not going to do anything because we still have some more work to do, like adding an event listener to this button itself. So let's take care of that right now. So theme toggle btn, add event listener. Again, this will be of click, and it will be a function. And what we want to do here is select the body element. And then when we click this theme toggle btn, we want to toggle the class of theme light. So class list toggle theme light. And now what we want to do is evaluate whether the body element contains the class of theme light. And if it does, then we want to add the current theme to the local storage. So that's exactly what we are going to do. If, and then here we can say body element class list contains theme light. Then what we want to do here is set the item within local storage. So as opposed to using get item, we will say local storage, set item, and then here we just pass in the key value pair. So here, current theme, which is what we have right here, what we check. And then here we can just say again whatever. So let's just say that the value it's going to be theme active. Again, you can name this whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. Else, we want to do the opposite, which is remove. So as opposed to saying set item, we just say remove item. So let's test that out. If we, for example, click on this theme, you see that everything changes. If I refresh the page, the item is within local storage now. So again, let me just briefly go over what we did. So here we just defined the variables that we need. Then we get this current theme, if there is one, from the local storage. Now here we check whether there is a theme or not stored within local storage. If there is, then the body element will have the class of theme light. Then within this click event here, what we do here is select the body element, and then we basically just want to toggle the theme light class on and off when we click it, and then here we evaluate whether it contains the class of not or not. And if it does, then when we toggle it, we can just either add the theme or remove it based on what it is. And that's why right here, when we click it, you see that everything switches. And if we refresh, we still get to keep the theme. And that's going to be it pretty much for this JavaScript portion and this header section. So the next section that we want to work on is going to be the welcome message. So let's jump back inside of the index.html, scroll all the way down to the welcome message comment. And what we want to do here is open up a section. This section is going to have the class of welcome message. And then inside of it, I'm going to have a div with the class of container. Then inside of here, I'm going to have an h2. This h2 is going to have the class of title, independent, I can't even type. So independent title, or spell, I should say, and then control panel. And actually, we can probably just leave that in one line. So control panel. And underneath, what I want to do here is kind of just create another box. And then in there, I'm going to be placing the content that we have here. And what we are going to do is actually have a div with the class of card. Then in here, I'm going to have a header with the class of card header. So that's going to be this area right here. And inside of here, I'm going to have the small tag, and I'm going to type getting started. Then underneath, I'm going to have another title, so h2 with the class of title, and that one will just say welcome admin. Actually, welcome back admin. So that's going to be it for this header. And then we need an image, another title, and then some text. So let's go underneath of this header here. And what we are going to do is have a div, and this div is going to have the class of card body. And I actually want to use the grid class that we added within the CSS earlier. And then here we are going to create basically a 2-column grid. So first we are going to have a div for the image. And here we can just call this card image. And inside of it, we will have the image itself. This image is going to be inside of the assets folder. Then the images folder, and the one we want to have in here is server image. Then underneath of this card image, we want to have a div with the class of card information. And here we want to have another title. So this one, since it will be the main title, we will use an h1. This h1 will have the class of title as well as the class of main title. And those secondary classes, we just use them so that we can style things individually. So here we can say affordable, actually powerful, and then reliable servers. Then we need a p tag, and this p tag is going to have the class of card description. And then here we can just use some dummy text, but I'm actually going to copy the text that I have from the demo and paste it in here. But if you wanted to add some dummy text, you can just use lorem and then hit tab, and that's going to generate some dummy text for you. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the welcome message itself. Let's go back to the original project here, and that's not looking very good, but we are going to fix that. So inside of the styles.css, let's go here underneath of the welcome message comment. We are going to style the card we are going to start with a background color. So the background color is going to be the dark color. Then we are going to apply some padding all around of 2.5 rem. The border radius here is going to be 0.4 rem, just to keep everything consistent. And then I also want to apply a box shadow to all of my cards. So box shadow, 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and then we can just use 3 rem here for the blur as well as the spread. And then we can use an RGBA here for the opacity. And it's going to be 63. Actually, I could just use tab to move over to the next one, and then 105. And here, as far as the alpha or opacity, which means that how much you can see through this background color or this color itself, because it doesn't always mean you're going to be using a color, we'll just use 0.1. And you can really see it all that much here, but it's really subtle. Especially it's going to stand out more on the light theme, just like so. And yeah, that's going to be the styles for the card. Let me actually style the title now. And here I'm going to apply a font size of the font size normal. Then a margin bottom of the margin small. I'm now going to select the independent title. And this title is going to have a font size, which is going to be slightly larger, font size medium. The color here is going to be the light color. And then I'm going to apply some padding here as well, 2.5 rem top and bottom, and then 0 here for the left and right. Actually not top and bottom, so this one is, the first one is going to be for the top, the middle one for the left and right, and then the last one is going to be for the bottom. So this one, I'm just going to do half of this, which is 1.25 rem. Now I'll select the main title. And this one is just going to have a larger font size. So font size large. Now I'm going to select the card header. Actually, I want to add something else here. As opposed to using 0.1, what I'll do is actually modify this. Let me actually, yeah. So here, what I'll do instead is just switch over the box shadow just to move it a little bit more to the right. And to do that, that's going to be pretty simple. So let's just get rid of what we originally had here. And let's just do something really small, like 0.5. So 0.5 rem, 0.5 rem. And then here we can just say 1 rem. And as you can see now, it's a little bit more noticeable now that we have it all the way to the right here. And maybe I'll just make it more subtle. Let me just do 0.5. Actually, no, it's way too large. Let's do 0.5. So yeah, that looks pretty good. So now let's go back here and select the card header. And I'm going to be adding a padding block here. And that just refers to the padding top and bottom. And I'm making it 1 rem. Then the margin bottom for some separation is going to be the margin medium. And then I'm going to add a border bottom of 1 pixel, then solid. And then we'll just use the custom property here of border bottom color. So let me just go back here. So border bottom colors, that's going to be this RGBA, which is going to be a really faded white. And let's go all the way back down. So next I'm going to go underneath, and the other thing that I want to style here is the small text. So card header small. And what I want to do here is add a font size, which is going to be slightly smaller than what we already have with the custom properties of 1.2 rem. And then for the color here, we can just switch it. And this one is going to be 7E and then 8299. Let me actually switch this back to the other theme. And so you can already tell everything's looking pretty good so far, although it still needs to be improved a little bit more. So now I'm going to select the card header title. And here, I just want to get rid of the margin bottom. Then I'm going to select the card image. And here, I'm just going to apply some padding all around of 2.5 rem. Then I'm going to select the card description. And what I want to do here is apply a font size of the font size small, followed by a margin bottom of margin small. Just like so. Now everything is looking much better. So next we are going to go work on the management area. So let's jump back into the index.html and let's go here underneath of the management area comment. So if we go back and take a look at the completed project, you'll see that this particular section is split into two by using display grid, and it's going to be this particular area and then this one right here. And then this one is going to be another container that's going to hold all the different columns for the content that we have here. So let's go back, and now I'm going to use the section tag, and I'm going to apply the class of management area. Then inside of it, I'm going to have a div with the class of management area container. Then I'm going to have another class of container and then dgrid. So in here, I'm going to have another card. And this card is also going to have a header inside of it with the class of card header. And then here I'm going to have the small tag. Actually, before I do that, let me just add the h2 because the small is actually going underneath of the h2. So the h2 will have the class of title, and then here we can just say quick actions. And underneath we can now have the small tag, and this is going to say access frequently visited places quicker. And that's going to be it for this card header. So we are now going to go underneath, and we are going to have the card body. Inside of the card body, we are going to have several different anchor tags. So this anchor tag is going to have the class of card body link. We can use a placeholder here. And as far as the content inside of the link, we want to have an icon followed by text. So the icon I want to use here is RI server and then line. And then we can go outside of this I tag, and then we can type in manage server. And let's take a look at how that looks right now. So it's looking really good so far. The icon is not showing up, seems, and that's because I'm missing the RI here. So now it's showing up. So now that we have the basic structure here, we can go ahead and copy this, paste it down below as many times as we need it. The only thing we have to do now is go ahead and just change the text as well as the icon. So here we can say security, settings. Then for the text, here we can say manage account. And then finally, we can just say subscription. And now we can just go ahead and change the icons. So this one is going to be shield. The third one will be account box line. And finally, bank card. So let's quickly take a look at that. And all of the icons are now showing up. Let's work on the other section of this, which is going to be this one that has all the cards inside of it. And we are going to find this card, and then we are going to go underneath. And here we can open up another div, and this one is going to have the class of card group, and then an additional class of dgrid to turn it into a grid container. Then we are going to have a div, and this one is going to be the class of card, and then the class of border green. And here we can just have a div. We don't need a class here because we are not going to be doing much with it. This is just for grouping purposes. And we can just use an h2 here. This h2 will have the class of title. And want more power. Underneath, we can use a p tag with the class of card description. And actually, I'm just going to use some dummy text here, so I'm just going to copy it. Just like so. Then we are also going to have a button, and this button is going to go underneath of this div with no class, so button. And this button is going to have a class of list link. Even though it's not inside of the list, I just want to use the same styles that the other lists have. And then we can say upgrade now. So now that we have the basic structure here, all we have to do is just keep adding different cards. So let's copy this, since they're all going to be the same with just some minor modifications. And we're going to be having 4 cards. So the second one is going to have the class of border green changed to border yellow. And I'm actually not going to bother too much changing the text for now. I'll just revisit this in a little bit. So border yellow, then the third one is going to be border orange, and then finally border, let's just do border pink. And let's see what I want to change now. So for some of them I had text here, so for example this one, then this one doesn't have a description, and then this one does. So let's go ahead and we can get rid of this div altogether, since we don't really need it, since we only have 2 items now. And we can go ahead and do the same thing here for the, let's actually take a look again. So this one has text, this one doesn't, this one doesn't, so only 2 of them, which is the first one and the last one. So let's get rid of the text here as well. And if we go back, everything looks exactly how we wanted it to look. So let's not worry too much about the text itself, because again, it's just placeholder and you can change it to be whatever you want. But yeah, that's going to be it for this section. Let's now go back inside of the styles.css so that we can make it look a lot better. And here we are going to start with the management area section. And I'm going to be adding a padding block here, which again is only going to apply padding top and bottom, so 2.5 rem. Then I'm going to select the management area container. And here I'm going to be applying a gap. We can use the gap because remember that we applied the dgrid class here, as you can see. And the gap here is going to be medium. should be medium instead, gap medium. And that's just going to create some separation between them, as you can see right here. Then I'm going to select the management area and then the card header inside of it. And I'm going to get rid of this border bottom. So management area and then the card header. And I'll say border bottom, none. Then I'm going to select the card group. And here I'm going to apply a gap as well, which is going to be gap medium. And what we can do here is actually get rid of this, and we can place it here as well, since we basically have the same styles. So it just saves us a few lines of CSS. And it's going to be exactly the same result. Then I'm going to style the card body link, card body link. And the font size here is going to be the font size small, followed by a background color of FFF4DE. And actually, I think I had a green color actually. So yeah, we had a green color, not this light one. So for that, we can just change it to the accent, just like so, which is exactly what we had on the demo. And then the color, well, the color is already white, so we don't need to do anything here. Let's create some separation by applying a margin bottom, which is going to be the margin medium. Then we can add a padding all around of 1.5 rem, and that's just going to make it larger. Then this is going to have the same border radius of 0.4 rem. And now we can make this a flex container, display flex. And then here we want to align the items to the center. And then we can say that we want a gap for separation between the icon and the text. And this gap is going to be gap small. So now let me show you what I meant when I said that I removed the line height from the icons because it would cause alignment issues when using Flexbox. So let's go all the way back up. And right here, if I comment out the line height, you'll see that the alignment here is going to get a little bit messed up. It's still there, but as if you notice, everything is larger. So that's why I made it a line height of 0. So if we go back all the way down, we can continue working on the card group card. So card group card. And then we are going to give this the position of relative because we are going to be using pseudo elements for the borders that we have here. And we want to position the border absolutely relative to the card itself. So let's say that I also want to display a flex. Then the flex direction here is going to be column. I want to align my items, flex start. And then I want to justify the content space between. And that's just going to create separation between the two of them. Now I'm going to give them a min height. So the min height is going to be 17.5 rem. If they can, and if they need to, they can also take more space than they need because I gave this a min height. And then again, same consistency. So I'll use a border radius of 0.4 rem. Finally, the background color here, we can just say that it's going to be the dark color. Even though actually we already have it, so we don't really need it. So what we are going to do next, let's actually take a look at how things look here in the light mode. Everything still looks good. So what we want to do next now is select the pseudo element itself. So let's actually create it. So card group, and I was gonna copy it, but it's going to be faster if I just go ahead and type it out. So card group, card, after, and then here we can say that the content is going to be an empty string. The position will be absolute. The width will be 10 rem. Then the height is going to be 10 rem as well. Then we want to position it -2 pixels from the top. And then we want to position it -2 pixels from the right. And then a C index of -1 so that we can send it to the back. And here we want to do the same thing with the border radius of, we can actually inherit it from the parent. And now what we have to do is add the background colors individually. So let's now go ahead and say that border green, after, and the colors here are going to be linear gradients. So we will use the background image instead, and we will say linear gradient. We want to rotate it 235 degrees, and then we want to use the following colors. So this one is going to be the accent, and why is it not showing up? So I guess it's not showing up, so we'll just type it out, and here we can say accent color. Then we can go ahead and say that the next stop is going to be transparent. And then finally, we want to use the dark color here. And it's now actually showing up. And seems like I messed it up somewhere, so I'm missing another. And let's see. And there you go. The background color for the pseudo element is now showing up. We have to do the same thing for every single color, so let's just go ahead and copy this and paste it down below, and then we can just go ahead and change the classes as need be. So this one was yellow. The color that we need here is not going to be the accent color. It will actually be the following hex of FE, and then BA, and then 5B. And that one is working already. The next one is going to be orange, and this one is going to be the same. We have to get rid of this custom property here, EB 786C, and this one was pink, so we can use here, for example, let me just use white. That one is already showing up, but let's go ahead and modify the color itself. And let's see how that looks. And that looks pretty good, so I guess we'll just keep that one. And let me turn it into a hex instead, just like so. And a few more things that we have to do now is style the text and then the buttons. So let's select here the card group, card description. And this will have a margin bottom of, let's do margin medium. Why does it keep doing small? So margin medium. And then I'm going to select the card group list link. And this one is going to get a background color. And this background color is going to be the variable for the transparent background button color, I should say. Then the color itself is going to be white. So we can use color light. And it should be light color instead. So light color. And finally, I'm going to give it some padding here, top and bottom of, let's do 1.25 rem, and then 0 left and right. Actually, not 0. What I want to do is, should I make them bigger? Let me see if I did make them bigger. Actually, I left them as it is with the default, so let's not even bother with that, because they already look good as they are. And yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for this section. The next step is to work on the footer, and then we're going to be almost done. Then after that, the only thing we have to do is style the scroll bar a little bit, followed by the media queries. So let's go ahead and jump back into the index.html. Let's find the footer here. And what we are going to be doing is using the footer tag. Let me actually move it over here. And to start here, we are going to be using the footer tag, giving it the class of footer. Then inside of it, we will have a div with the class of footer container, and the class of container as well. Then we are going to have a span with the class of copyright information, and in here we are just going to use ampersand copy, and then 2021 cpanel, all rights reserved. Let's actually fix this, cpanel. And that's going to be it for the copyright information. Then we need another list for all of the items that we have right here, for the footer navigation, I should say. So underneath here, we are going to use a UL with the class of list, then an LI with the class of list item, which is going to be exactly the same as the navigation that we had for the header. And here we will have a list link. Then we'll use a placeholder, and we can add some text here. So terms and conditions. Actually, let's just leave it like that, conditions. And now we can go ahead and copy this, paste it down below 2 more times. And then we can just go ahead and change the text itself. So privacy policy. And then the last one will say refund policy. And that's going to be our basic footer. What we are going to do next is go back to the styles.css, and it's only going to have a few things styled up, so it shouldn't be taking too long. So let's select the footer itself, and the font size here is going to be font size small, followed by a color, which is going to be the dark color lighter. Then we are going to apply a background color here of dark color so that it matches with the header. And then finally some padding here of 1.35 rem, and then 0 left and right. What we are going to do next is select the footer container itself. And this will be a display flex. And then flex direction will be column. And then we will apply a gap here for spacing of gap medium. Now I'm going to select the footer list link. And I'm going to change the order here. So what I want to do, well, before I do that, let me just wrap up the link itself. So what I want to do is add a padding left, because as you can see, it's a little bit to the right because of the padding all around. And I'm just going to set it to 0. So padding left, 0. And now everything is aligning here on the left. But let me go ahead now and change the alignment. Well, not the alignment, but the order of the UL and the copyright info, because I want to move it to the copyright info to the bottom and the UL to the top. So here I'll say copyright info, or information, I should say. And I'm going to give it an order of 1. And that's going to move it all the way to the bottom. And you're probably thinking, well, if you gave it the order of 1, why isn't it the first one? Well, that's because here, when you use order and you set it to 1, it's actually meaning number 2. Because to get the number 1, it's going to be 0. So it kind of just works the same way that if you had like an array in JavaScript or any other language, they start at 0 and then go up from there. So 0 will be the first one, 1 is going to be the second one, 2 is going to be the third one, and so on. So let me just turn that back to 1. And that's going to be pretty much it for the footer. Let's style up the scroll bar now. So first, let's select, well, we have to use the prefix here of WebKit scroll bar. And we are going to be changing the width to be 10 pixels, which is 1 rem. Then we are going to be selecting the WebKit scroll bar track. Scroll bar track. And this is going to have a background color, which is going to be the following hex. So F1, F1, F1. Just like so. Then I'm going to select the thumb. So WebKit scroll bar thumb. And here we can use 3F. Well, first we have to specify that it's a background color. So here 3F, and then 4, 2, 5, 4. And finally on hover, we want to add an effect as well. So let me just grab this, paste it down below, and then change this to hover. And then we can just make a subtle change here. So 2E303B. Now when we hover over the scroll bar here, you can see the difference. Well, not the scroll bar, but the thumb. And yeah, that's going to be it for that. So now let's work on making this responsive, because it already looks pretty good on mobile devices such as phones. And for that breakpoint, let me actually make this bigger, like so. The first breakpoint is going to be the tablets. So what I'll do here is select my nav, and I'm going to increase the height. Should I increase the height, or should I just leave it as it is? Let's just try it out. So nav, height, let's do 10 more pixels. It's not going to be that much of a difference, but it is what it is. Then the independent title. The font size here is going to be changed to font size large. Then the padding top and bottom is going to be 4 rem, 0 left and right. Actually, to the top is going to be 4 rem, 0 left and right, and then 2 rem at the bottom. Then I'm going to select the card body. And I'm going to set some grid template columns here. So I want to repeat 2 times 1 fraction each, and that's going to put it side by side. And that's when we have enough space. Actually, this is still too big. I mean, I should say too small. Now it's actually taking effect. Then I'm going to align items to the center, just like so. I'm going to add a gap here of gap medium. And then the padding block is going to be set to 2.5 rem. Then the card image, I'm going to get rid of the padding that it has, setting it to 0. And the card image, which is the image inside of it, card image img. I'm going to set the max width here to be 80%. And then I'm going to say margin auto to center it back in the middle of this container. Then I'm going to select the management area container. And this I'm going to set, let's just scroll down so that we can see what's going on. So I want to have this and this side by side. So again, grid template columns. The first one, which is going to be this quick actions, is going to be 35 rem. And then the other one can just take up as much space as it needs. So we'll just say 1 fraction, and it's already looking pretty good. The other thing that I want to do now is modify the footer, so everything is just side by side. So footer container, flex direction is going to be changed back to row. And then I want to align items to the center. Here for the copyright information, I'm going to change the order back to 0, which is going to be the first one. And I'm going to select the footer list. And here I'm going to change the flex direction to column, well, not column because it's already a column, to row. And that's already looking pretty good. Now I want to align this list all the way to the right. So I'm going to add a margin left of auto. And finally, I just want to add in that little bit of padding to the right on the list links. So footer list link, padding right, well, not padding right, but padding left, 1.5 rem. And that's already looking pretty good. So the next step is to make this look better on larger screens. So we'll go to the next breakpoint. And what we are going to be doing here is basically resetting the navigation so that we can actually see what's going on. Let me just make this smaller. So let's just do 110% here. It's not going to be as visible, obviously, as 150%, but in order to be able to see what's going on for this larger breakpoint, I chose to make it smaller. So here, first of all, I'm just going to target the menu toggle BTN and set the display here to none and important, because if you remember correctly, this button already had the class of place item center, and then it has the display of inline flex, which is important, so we need to use important here to override it as well. Now we can go ahead and select the nav mobile and start with the reset. So the width will have the value of initial, the height will be initial as well, background color initial, then we can set the position to initial. Well, everything is actually going to be initial. Padding, then the transform, and finally the transition. Now I'm going to select the list that is a direct child of the nav mobile. And this will get a flex direction of row. Then we will also apply a margin left of 4 rem. And we can't really see it because I'm zoomed all the way in. Now we can. Next thing that we will do here is select the list link, followed by the card body link. And this, I'm going to be applying a transition. So it will be on the color over 0.25 seconds, and then on the background color as well. Next, I'm going to select the nav mobile list link. And here I'm just going to apply the same border radius of 0.4 rem. Now I'm going to select the current class, followed by the nav mobile list link, unhover, and then I'll do the same thing, but it will be on focus. Nav mobile list link, focus, and here we just want to change the background color to be it's going to be the accent. And then here we can change the color of the text itself to be the light color. So now if we go ahead and hover over it, we get the desired effect. Next thing that I'm going to style is the drop down menu, because as you can see, it's not looking pretty good. So first, we will give this the position of relative, because we want to position the drop down menu itself absolutely relative to the drop down. And then as far as the styles for the drop down menu, we want to set the width to 25 rem. Then we want to set the height back to initial. And then the background color, we are going to make it the light color. Padding all around is going to be 1.5 rem. Then the margin left will be 0. The border radius here is going to be 0.4 as well. Now the position will be absolute. Top starting position will be 100%. Then the left here will be 0. And then transform, translate Y, 0.8 rem. Box shadow, 0, 0, 3 rem. And then RGBA. And this is going to be 0.2. Then we want to transform, actually transition, transform, 0.25 seconds, and then on the opacity as well. And that already looks pretty good. So let's click it, goes away, comes back on. So that looks pretty good. Next, I'm going to select the drop down menu when it has the active class. Well, the drop down, I should say. And then when this has the class of active, I want to target the drop down menu inside of it. And here I want to transform, translate Y, 1.5 rem. So now if we go ahead and click it, we get the spacing that we wanted. Then I'm going to select the drop down menu list link, because as you can see, it only takes up as much space as it needs because currently it's display of inline. So we will give this a display of inline block. So drop down menu, list link, display block. And now if we hover over it, it takes up as much space as it can. Next thing that I'm going to do is give this a hover effect right here. So card, body link, hover, and then the background color here is going to be set to a darker color from the accent, just like so. So now if we hover over it, we get a darker color. After this, I'm going to select the card group. And then I'm going to set this to have a grid template columns of 2, 1 fraction each. So that's just going to have them side by side. So now that we have them side by side, we can go ahead and basically position them exactly where we want them. So let me just make this larger so that I can open up the inspector and show you guys what I'm doing. So it's going to be this grid right here inside of this section, and then inside of this one right here. So let me just turn that on. First, let me select the border green. So what do we want to do here? Well, I want to stretch the border green from 1 all the way to 3. So here we can say grid column, start at 1, and then stretch all the way across. So now it's stretching from the start to the end, which is exactly what we want. Now that kind of breaks up the layout a little bit, but not too much. So now let's go ahead and select the other ones. So here I can say yellow, and then I'll do the same for the orange. And that's not it. So orange. And here I just want to start at 1 and then end here at 2 instead. Just like so. So that's, well, it looks exactly how it did before, but here we just make sure that we specify where we want things to go, just in case for some reason the layout broke. And then here we can select the border pink. And we just want to stretch this one all the way to the top. So what we can do is say grid column is start at 2, which is going to be this one where it's already starting because grid is doing it automatically for us. But let's just make sure that we specify it. And then we want it to stretch all the way to the end, which again, it's already doing that. However, the new thing that we want to do here is add a grid row. And I want to say start at 2, meaning over here, and then stretch all the way to the end. So let me just get rid of this now and do that. So start at 2 and stretch all the way to the end. And just like so, we have the layout that we want. So let me just close this, make this a little larger. And then underneath here, I'm going to go ahead and add a hover effect to the buttons that we have here. So I'm going to select the card group, and then the list link inside of it and add a hover effect. This will be the background color. And here I want to apply the light color. And then for the color itself, here we can say dark color. So now when we hover over it, we get the effect that we want. So finally, the last thing we will do is add a hover effect here to the footer links as well. So let's select the footer and then the list link inside of it. And we will say on hover, we want to change the color to the accent color. And there we go. So that's going to be pretty much it for this project. Actually, no. Because as you can see, we're having an issue here with the image, and I know exactly what it is. So let's jump back into the styles.css and let's scroll all the way to the top where we had the styles for the background, floating background image. And what we have to do is add in a width here, because since we gave this the position of absolute, well, this is no longer is a display of block. So what that means is that it's only going to take up as much space as it needs. So that's why we have to give it the width of 100%. And then we have to do the same thing here for the image. So if we went back now, everything should be working perfectly, and it is. So that's going to be pretty much it for this video. As you can see, the responsiveness looks pretty good. Same thing if we make it bigger. So if you guys want to see more videos like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you found the video useful, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'll see you guys in the next video.